Hello, everyone. My name is Aminah, and today I'm here with Gabby to talk to you about what is happening with the world. We are from Fridays for Future Toronto, and our mission today and our mission for so long has been to create a space for youth to advocate for a better world and for a future that recognizes and implements Indigenous rights, uplifts marginalized voices, and communities and follows principles of climate justice. You can find us on Instagram at Fridays for Future TO and on Facebook with that same tag. You can also email us at Fridays for so the number 4 future to@gmail.com, and please ask questions, add comments in the YouTube chat. So, from ice sheets collapsing to the extent that we just can't go back, to horrible natural disasters and disastrous legislation, and don't forget, we're also in the midst of a pandemic, we have a lot to talk about and we have a lot going on. So, today we will highlight some more issues and we'll provide some solutions and activism that you can do. And before we get into our land acknowledgement, I'd like to share a quote from Emily Atkin from the Heated newsletter about fear. But fear is our most basic survival mechanism, and our planet is in survival mode. Fear gives us the strength to make tough decisions in order to survive. Fortunately, the most important decision we can make right now is not actually that tough. We may have to. As Obama said, grab our comfortable shoes, put on our masks, pack a brown bag, dinner, and maybe breakfast too, because we've got to be willing to stand in line all night if we have to. In the grand scheme, fear is a small price to pay. And that's something we want to keep in mind as we're doing all these things and as we're talking about everything that's happening. On to you, Gabby.
Thank you so much, Amina. That is such an excellent quote. And now we're going to get into our land acknowledgement. So we wish to acknowledge this land on which we're holding an online rally. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit River. Today, this meeting place is still home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. The land acknowledgement is about acknowledging the land, and unfortunately, alongside Indigenous peoples, Black voices have experienced erasure from our textbooks, and from the way Canada constructs its own history and narrative, do we know that the story of African Canadians spans 400 years and includes slavery, abolition, pioneering, urban growth, segregation, the civil rights movement, and a long engagement in civic life. And that's a quote from Lawrence Hill. We also acknowledge the privilege of online space that we have and the importance of using it to uplift voices and recognize the struggles that continue today of Indigenous peoples in Turtle Island. So we always like to go beyond this land acknowledgement and talk about it ourselves, because although this land acknowledgement is extremely significant, we just like to go beyond it for all of our weekly strikes. So I'll answer these questions, and Amina is totally free to answer these questions too. Our first question is, how do you place yourself or reflect on what the land acknowledgement means to you? For me, at least, I'm not Indigenous. However, I know how important this is for Indigenous peoples, and I really enjoy, and it's extremely important to listen to the significance of the land acknowledgement from other Indigenous people. Amina, you can answer this as well.
Yeah, I think land acknowledgement, it's something like that changes every week or it shifts slightly on what the land acknowledgement means to me. So as I reflect on the words we just heard on what territory, you know, the people who at once lived here, and now we have Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. And I think that's something I finally understood last night. I was reading the land acknowledgement and I was looking at different edits groups had done over the past few years and changes that had happened. And one thing that was included was that now there's so many different Indigenous groups, peoples that and communities that now live in Toronto, in so-called Toronto and in the Mississauga. So I think what the land acknowledgement also means to me, or as I reflect on it, is how over the last few years, the who the land acknowledgement, like who the land people who have occupied the land, kind of how that dynamic has changed. But no matter who it passes to, there I guess in the recent years there's still uh even though the dispossession took place, there is still a struggle. Um, there, people are still fighting or against, going against colonialism. And then that's something we'll talk about later on. But I think as I reflect on it, I come to the conclusion that it still um, continues today, the struggle.
Thank you so much, Amina. I completely agree, and all that's totally true. And we also like to ask, what intentions do we have to disrupt and dismantle colonialism beyond this territory acknowledgement? I know personally, I continue to learn from Indigenous people and uplift marginalized voices. And sorry, and I also tend to hold my government accountable because of how much power they have and how we want everybody in SoCal Canada to have the privilege that I have and privilege that my brothers and sisters have, and definitely just uplifting marginalized voices and giving them the space they need and giving them the power that they deserve.
Thanks for that, Gabby. And I think that's also a very heavy question. I think we say that almost every week. It's like these are big questions. And I think something that that stood out to me, what you said was, uplifting marginalized communities and, what it looks like, because it's not easy. It's an uncomfortable process. And again, it's all a learning process. So something recently that I learned was the importance of when you're consulting or if you're bringing something up to someone who is racialized or who is Indigenous, um, understanding like if you're asking for help for someone, that their labor and their time is valuable, and understanding that, because we're working in a field like for Fridays for Future Toronto, we aren't paid for the work we do. Um, and there's this general idea, oh, when we ask people of things, although we have given out honorariums and things like that, there's just this foundation of people working for the cause or for free. And I think if we want to support if we want to support the movement, or if we want to really transform society, and if we want to really uplift marginalized peoples, then we have to challenge, and it's something I've had to reflect a lot about, is we have to challenge the way in which we ask for help and who we ask for help for. Um, and who we're willing to pay and who we're not willing to pay. Like we're willing to pay for some formal resources from like this established group, but we're not willing to pay for an organizer who maybe, does not have the resources to kind of make their own website and have their own everything set up. But they have so much experience, but somehow they're not being paid for it, and they're not getting compensation, and they have to balance so many other things whilst doing this valuable work in hopes that their community gets to a better place. So I think that's something I've had to kind of reflect on and recognize, and then also now, as I'm placed in situations, try to act on it more.
Thank you so much. I love what you said about that being valuable, and I completely agree. And we are going to go into our theme questions or theme topics now. And firstly, we wanted to give a recap of what is happening at Six Nations and some updates. So we'll be quoting a lot from Climate Strike Canada and Indigenous Climate Action. So thank you so much, both of you, for sharing so much information on this for us to learn from. So on August 7th, Ontario Provincial Police officers raided the Mackenzie Meadows construction site and arrested several land defenders. The police showed up in large numbers and shot rubber bullets. Since July 19, Haudenosaunee land defenders from the Six Nations Reserve have peacefully reclaimed the Mackenzie Meadows construction site, now known as Mackenzie Road, south of Cladonia, Ontario. This region of Ontario is covered by the Haldimand Proclamation. For those who don't know, the Haldimand Proclamation was a decree that granted land to the Haudenosaunee Six Nations who had served on the British side during the American Revolution. Six Nations has lost most of the Haldimand tract due to unlawful sale or seizure by the governments of Ontario and Canada. In 2006, Caledonia sold and attempted to build a subdivision in an area known as Cannonstaden, I'm so sorry if I pronounced that wrong, the protected place. In February 2006, land defenders began to blockade Highway 6 in opposition to the housing development. In June 2006, Ontario purchased the land from developers. So all this is a lot taken, obviously, but we want to know what we can do to help. And please go beyond this information and take some of it and do your own research as well, please. If you live in the community, join the land defenders at 1492 Land Back Lane. Supporters are needed on the ground to hold up space. Make a donation by e-transferring landback6nations@gmail.com. Call and email ministers and demand they meet with Six Nations land defenders. A list of ministers to call and email and an email template can be found on our Instagram at Fridays for Future Toronto. Also, some items that are needed, and there are always updates on this as well, at Six Nations include wood, sweaters, rain, gear, water, food, tarps, and gas. Gas and wood are always needed. Please keep updated with 1492 Landback Lane on Facebook. And for more accurate and timely info on Real People's Media is also an important Mohawk media source for updates on this. And I'll give the next point to Aminah.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah, thank you for that, Gabby. Any resources, I think if you hear the list, if you have something at home that you can give, or connect with someone who is going to provide support, I think that would be quite helpful. And it's an action that you can do, and go beyond statements of solidarity online or statements of solidarity to yourself, and provide that support. Next, we'll be talking about just something to add to your dose of Friday activism, Ontario Highway, and a little update on Bill 197. So there's a highway that it's like one of a new 400 series highway that the Ontario government is trying to build, and it is a giant waste of your public money, and it's destroying the environment, the nature that we've tried to so hard to take care of. I think it is around the estimates at this point are around $6 billion, with a lower estimate of 5 billion, and it's not that helpful. We talked about it briefly last week, but looking at the report from Environmental Defense, that's where all the information will be shared from. We have a couple more facts to share with you. I'm just sharing the report on our YouTube chat. Yeah. So the environmental impacts of the new 400 series highway. The corridor needed for this highway would be 170 meters wide and about 50 kilometers long. And it's going to go across the green belt in Vaughan and across undeveloped land not in the green belt, known as the white belt, in Caledon and Brampton. It would have significant environmental impacts, including impacts to natural areas such as rivers, valleys, wetlands, other lands, valley lands, conservation areas, and forested areas. And this includes 53 river and stream crossings. This will result in loss of thousands of hectares of prime agricultural lands, including about 1,000 hectares in the Greenbelt and Vaughan. This highway would also lead to fragmentation of remaining agricultural lands, increased emissions of greenhouse gases, and I think something to recognize here is how much transportation, if we're looking at our emissions, and if we're looking understanding that the warming target that we've set for, I believe 1.5 degrees Celsius from the Paris Agreement, transportation accounts for approximately 33% of all of our emissions. And building a new highway will only increase the emission of greenhouse gases in these regions when we should be reducing them. Again, this is all from Environmental Defense. I'm just quoting the report here. Several lower and upper tier municipalities have declared climate emergencies, so it doesn't make sense to increase your emissions and make a problem worse when you know it's an emergency. If it's an emergency, the least you can do is not make the problem worse. and increased air pollution. And we're in a pandemic, so we're kind of seeing how much not interacting with your environment in like a safe manner, in a sustainable manner, in a way where you're taking care of the land, has resulted from people living in like very, packed conditions, poverty, from encroachment into animal territories, farm like mass agriculture, mass farming. We're seeing like there are all sorts of impacts on our health, from the way we have been treating the environment not respectfully, and the burden falling on people. And if we invest in this highway, there are more risks, such as more air pollution, harming the health of residents, and damage to streams and groundwater and plants from road salt runoff. It's also known that, according to the panel that kind of reviewed this highway most recently, they said that it would decrease transportation time, from getting one place to another by 30 to 60 seconds. So imagine all that money going to developers for something that won't really help. And we're in an emergency. So where can this money actually go that will help you, that will help other communities, and that will be an investment in our public good for the long term? Because it's very likely in the future we're facing a lot of obstacles, in terms of what sort of infrastructure we want. And I know this is like a very boring topic, a highway, but it's we've got to make it interesting. So it's a massive amount of money that we don't want going there. So let's put it into public transportation. Let's get it into connecting more communities who weren't connected before and have to take like a 30-minute drive somewhere, instead if they can take like a 15-minute um, go bus or a go train. So I think our populations are increasing a lot, in the GTA and beyond the GTA and other communities surrounding. So this is an opportunity to actually consult the public, and this is an opportunity to invest in as youth, in our future. The Ontario I want is not one with another giant highway. And another update. So I think people remember Bill 197, Phones app, the omnibus bill that was passed. So basically, that bill is everything that the government was trying to pass, before COVID, but now it's called an Economic Recovery Act, and it takes away the government's responsibility to consult with the public, and it has a lot of things in there that are really hard to read. It references to a lot of other things that most people, and I know that with a person with limited exposure to reading legislation, I find it really hard to read. And it's something that's resulted in quite a few problems. So thankfully, environmental groups on August 10th, we found out, launched a lawsuit against the Ontario government for its failure to consult with Ontarians before steamrolling through major changes to environmental laws. EcoJustice, on behalf of Greenpeace Canada and Wilderness Committee, submitted an application for judicial review in Ontario's Divisional Court because the Ford government has once again ignored the voices of Ontarians and ignored the voices for our future. I'm gonna pass it off to Gabby here before I get too passionate.
Thank you so much, Amina. All those updates are extremely important. And I understand that sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to understand, but it really is important to go just beyond some solidarity. But thank you so much, Amina. For our next update, we're going to give an update on Mauritius and what is happening over there. So on July 25th, a massive oil spill began near Mauritius, which is a country in East Africa. The MV Waukesha, which split into two, has spilled at least 1,000 tons of oil into the Indian Ocean, and is still spilling more now. Not only will this spill cause horrible environmental impacts on coral reefs, fish, birds, but heavy oil is toxic to humans as well and can cause suffocation, dehydration, organ damage, and other health issues. The socioeconomic impacts will be significant as well, as many Mauritians depend on the waters for tourism or fishing to make a living. So what can we do to help with this? You can donate to Mauritian Wildlife Foundation here. We're probably going to put it on the YouTube chat, so you can donate there, or to EcoSud, which is also a great place to donate. The government in Mauritius must be held accountable. This is going to have massive impacts socioeconomically, environmentally, and just really, really, really significant impacts. And we have to do our part as well. So if you go to fridaysforfuture.mauritius on Instagram, you'll see a bunch of updates, and we'll hopefully be posting more updates as well. And please research this. They're excellent articles to learn more about what's happening. And I'm going to pass it back on to Aminah.
Thank you, Gabby. Just got those links up there. So again, take a look. I think this is, this is happening in the midst of a pandemic. And it's an incredible burden for like a small country to carry. And it's absolutely terrible that now this is what the locals are faced with. And as many resources that you can provide, and even if it's just sharing the information, I think we see things when they happen, right? So in the media and the news, all the information we get is when they happen. And then there's a general, it's trending. So now everyone wants to donate. But the point is that you keep, like, this will take, I don't know, months, maybe years to clean up. So try to keep, checking in on it, and on all these issues. And I know it's a lot, um, but I know there are always new problems appearing in the world. So if you have the capacity, check in on these things. And we're here as a reminder as well. Check in on it, read what's happening right now, and hopefully, this might be an oil spill that will be cleansed. So gotta believe in it, keep on checking in. Next, we'll be talking a bit more about our Eyes Open Canada campaign. So on August 12th, International Youth Day, Fridays for Future Toronto participated in hashtag Eyes Open Canada banner drop. If you saw, we have this like super cool eye, just like watching Queen's Park. Because we are watching. That's what we want everyone to know. We are watching, and we're taking notes, and we're calling you out. Because we're not impressed with all the, repeals to important legislation, ignoring voices that are key in all these conversations to getting to a just recovery. So we participate in this with Montreal, Ottawa, and Edmonton, and these are our demands: endorsing and implementing Bill 76, repeal of Schedule 6 of Bill 197, a cancellation of Ontario gas ramp-up, and a green and just recovery for all. And we'll go into a just recovery and what that means, but we had some amazing youth, and so many people working in the background to kind of get this done. I'm just going to name some names here. So we had Cooper Price, we had Maya, we had Ira, Sophie, we had Ruby. I don't know, there's just so many people. And if you are in your living room or wherever you're watching this, a little hand of applause to the youth who went out there, and also Gabby. People who kind of went out there, did the work, or even from behind the scenes, who weren't able to be there in downtown Toronto. And just, when we are a youth org, and oftentimes we see a lot of media being like, wow, they're youth, they're doing amazing jobs, they're doing what the adults couldn't do. And really what we want is the adults and the youth and everyone kind of working together, right? This isn't all the work we're doing is not for anyone to watch from the sidelines. It's for you to join in the movement. So if you know any youth, send them our way. No experience needed. I started with 0 experience. I started with stuttering at Queen's Park every week. And we're here to support each other and try to build a very positive space to build each other up. And we are always looking forward to hear from people who support us. And also thank you to Climate Fast, who are always supporting us. So next up, we're going to talk about our action. The action for this week. We haven't done an action in a very long time. So we want to recognize the amazing work our Just Recovery team has done. So that's also a lot of people, but there are a lot of youth behind this. And recently, Christia Freeland, she got into our office. She got into the, I think she is our finance minister now. And now we have an opportunity to advocate for something she committed for. So she said that she would have an equitable and green just recovery. But we need to make sure that in September, before September happens, when she releases the plan, we got to make sure that she's hearing us. We have to make sure that, like a lot of these policymakers, they want to do big changes. And this is something we talked about last week as well. But when they hear public pressure, they're more likely to do these things and they're more likely to commit. So I'm going to share a couple of resources in the chat. And you can kind of see what are the just recovery principles we want people to commit to and some actions you can do. And we're also going to set time aside so that everyone can send emails, tweet, or send a comment on the Instagram post, to make sure the pressure is on. So we'll be taking like 5 to 10 minutes for that. So I'll just be posting the links. And please comment. Have you done any of this? Have you sent an email yet? We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Aminah. And yeah, thank you everybody for our Just Recovery team and our Eyes Open team for just doing so much work. We appreciate it so much. And everybody sharing all this information as well and just taking time out of your day to read some articles or share a post. It really does mean a lot to everyone and it is going to make a really big impact. So we'd like to thank everybody for joining us, everybody for hearing all this information. I know that it can be difficult. We just shared a lot of information, but if you just take some time out of your day every day to, check our Instagram, check our website, and just read up on incredible articles and speakers talking about this, it really does go a long way. And remember to join us next week. And also keep an eye out for September 25th. That is our global climate strike. We will be posting updates on that. There will be actions happening all over the world. There's probably going to be something for you. So please join us and just keep an eye out for any additional information and updates. Aminah, if you'd like to add anything, you're totally welcome to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sending, so I'm going to take a quick 5 minutes. I think we can do this live, where I want everyone who's watching to kind of commit to sending a letter right now, writing an email out, something Gabby can do and I can do. So I think we'll be live streamed, but as we write our letters out and we send something off, using the Just Recovery template, this is something we want to engage everyone in. So open up I guess my instructions are, open up the link, open up your email account if you have one, and send an email. Okay, so it's 11:28. Let's take 5 minutes. Let's come back at 11:32, and then, yeah. I just noticed a couple things. The text that you're copying pasting is white, so convert it to black. And then the template is like for any official, so you can edit the template so it's directed to our finance minister. Okay, so I just sent my email. I am back. Gabby, were you able to? Yeah. Okay, so we have 2 emails in the inbox. Was anyone else able to? Would love to hear if anyone else was able to send some emails in. Yeah, but I think this is a good point to wrap up. That was my very long comment, Gabby, after your conclusion. Just something to get some Friday dose of activism. But yeah, I think that's a good place to sign off. Thank you, everyone, and bye.